Let's continue talking about biosecurity for swine operations. The preparation of the site is very important before the arrival of the pigs, and make sure those facilities have been properly cleaned. Then after they've been cleaned, that they have been disinfected. After they've been disinfected, make sure that they have been dried, that they have been inspected, and they have been approved ahead of the arrival of the pigs. And this is true for any and all groups of pigs and any and all sites, facilities, barns, buildings, whatever installations that we have. The equipment like carts and sorting boards and shakers, whatever we use as much as possible, it should be farm specific, and even if possible, they should be barn specific. And if we need to move them from one farm to another farm or from one barn to another barn, let's make sure that that equipment it's washed first and disinfected second. In case of disinfectants, I want to stress this out because I find a lot of people using disinfectants in the way they think that they should be used, and then there's not too many people that actually read the label instructions for disinfectants. Please read the labels and make sure that your personnel at the farm it's reading the labels instructions, that they understand what those instructions are, and therefore use the disinfectants in the proper way. If we use disinfectants in an incorrect way, the only thing we're doing is wasting money because those disinfectants are doing absolutely nothing. All the repairs and maintenance work that needs to be done at the barns or at the pen level, as much as possible, should be completed before the arrival of the pigs or after the pigs have left when the period of time when the barn is empty, and then we can proceed to clean and disinfect the barn and have that barn completely disinfected, dry, and ready before the arrival of the pigs. Any spillage, garbage, any clutter, any debris, anything that is lying around that should not be laying around needs to be collected on a daily basis before leaving the farm. Let's remember that most vermin and pests are nocturnal animals, and therefore we want to make sure that we clean up and we pick up all the trash, because rodents, a lot of the insects and a lot of the pests and vermin, like I mentioned before, they are going to be nocturnal animals, and that's where most likely when we are not going to be present at the farm, and therefore we don't have an appreciation of the presence of these pests at the farm. When we talk about transport personnel, whether they're transport of pigs or transport of feed or transport of any other supplies or materials that the farm need, they should wear clean clothes and footwear during each loading and or unloading event at the farm. They should be provided with disposable boots that are clean, they're only used once, that if they don't have to exit the truck, then let's have them not exit the truck, because that is a source of contamination. If they can stay in the truck, let's have them stay in the cabin of the truck and not come in contact with the rest of the farm. And it's very important that these delivery workers know the specific procedures to enter each one of the farms. And we're going to, if we're managing more than one farm, we need to make sure that they are aware of the similarities as well as the differences in each farm, and also assign a person, farm worker to each delivery person, just to make sure that they refresh the procedures that they need to follow and actually check that they're following those procedures. Transport personnel under no circumstance should never ever enter a barn where we have animals. They should stay outside with the truck if they are delivering feed. If they are picking up animals, then the animals should be placed in a location where the personnel coming with the truck does not need to have, there's no need for them to enter the barn. Farm workers at the same time should not enter the truck. There is a line of separation there. If we need people in the truck, they need to stay with the truck, and the farm people need to stay with the farm. If at any point in time the farm personnel enters the truck, then that person should be considered to be dirty, and they should follow the procedures that have been put in place in order to make sure they go back into a clean status. Market pigs that enter the truck under any circumstance should go back into the barn or go back into the farm. Once they're loaded into the truck, they really need to exit the farm for good. All farms experience mortality, and a lot of the times mortality is caused by some underlying medical condition, and some of those medical conditions could very well be pathogenic when we are just simply not aware of what pathogens they are. So we need to make sure that whatever method of disposal we're using, if we're composting, if we're incinerating, if we're doing rendering, if we're doing a deep pit, whatever method we have, make sure that we follow the proper procedures to minimize the spread of any potential pathogen that cause any mortality at the farm. If we're using rendering, then the collection point should be outside of the farm, or should be right at the perimeter of the farm, and then that mortality needs to be placed in containers that are appropriately designed, that are protected from predators, from rodents, from insects, and from other vermin, in order to minimize the spread of disease. If we are composting animals, we need to make sure that that compost pile is covered at all times, and also making sure that that composting pile is reaching the high temperature that is needed in order to basically pasteurize that composting pile. If we're using incineration equipment or any other equipment, all those equipments need to be properly maintained to make sure that they're performing in the way that the manufacturer intended to do. Mortalities should be collected throughout the day. If we are disposing them, that disposal should occur at the end of the day, because once we go into the disposal of that mortality, then farm personnel should be considered to be on a dirty status, and then they should not return to the barn. And if they need to return to the barn, then they need to follow whatever are the proper cleaning and disinfectant procedures that they need to follow in order to come back into a clean status. Any equipment, any and all equipment that is used to dispose mortality, after we dispose that mortality, that equipment needs to be washed, cleaned, and disinfected before it can be reused and then brought back into the farm. In the farms, because we have animals, because we have feed is very attractive to many vermin and to many pests, including rodents, wild birds, predators, insects, flies. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of different kinds of vermin and pests that can be present at a farm, and we need to minimize the presence of these vermin and these pests. We should use bait stations outside the barns, and we should make sure that we have a plan and we follow a plan to inspect, clean, and fill those bait stations at least on a monthly basis if we do it ourselves, or if we have an outside pest company, make sure that they are coming to do the job as supposed to. In case of the barns, it's a good idea to maintain at least a 1 meter area that is free of vegetation all the way around the building, where we're going to have no vegetation, no place where trash can accumulate, no place basically where any of these vermin or pests can hide during the day or during the night. Any clutter, any debris, or any trash that we have outside that may accumulate during the day, it's going to be a source for harboring and attracting pests and vermin, and then that needs to be removed on a daily basis. Like I mentioned before, ideally before leaving the farm in the evening. Bird netting it's something that is crucial to have. Birds, because of their ability to fly, they can visit several different farms. Feed is something, it's an easy source of nutrition for wild birds, and therefore they're going to be drawn to the pig feed. We need to make sure that the barns are properly equipped with bird netting or whatever other barrier we have in order to prevent the entrance of these wild birds. This is particularly important in buildings where we use natural ventilation and we have wide open spaces. Domestic animals should not commingle with production animals. I think the days of having a cat for rodent control should be long gone. And then there's other procedures and methodologies that we can use to control rodents other than having cats or any other domestic animals that are freely roaming around the farm. This is a very nice diagram provided by Iowa State University, and it talks about the peripheral buffer area and the line of separation, and we'll be discussing this a little bit more in detail. But here you can see a really nice organization of a farm where it has a single entry point at the beginning, and then from there we can visit each one of the different barns, and also we can see sort of like in the bottom right hand of that blue line, we see a white rectangle over there, and that is the carcass disposal and pickup location. And as we talked about before, that is basically technically half inside, half outside the farm. But whenever the personnel comes to pick up the disposal, the personnel from outside the farm, in this case, let's say a rendering company, they don't really need to go inside of the farm. The peripheral buffer area is the first line of defense. It's an exterior controlled boundary around the buildings and the pig rearing areas. The purpose is to reduce the contamination of the animals, and by doing that, we're protecting the pigs. The idea here is to control the entry of everything that is going to come into the farm: vehicles, equipment, feed, people, pigs, and everything. That everything is checked and everything it's make sure that is following the proper procedure to enter the farm. A physical barrier around the perimeter of the farm would be ideal to have. This with the idea to have limit access points, where the access points are ideally there is a single access point into the farm. And we need to make sure that we post signs that are visible, that are bright in color, that they're easy to understand, that will tell people that they are about to enter a biosecure area. We started this talk making a reference to castle, and I really like this picture of the Leeds Castle in England, because the lake that surrounds the castle, it's analogous to the peripheral buffer area. And that's an area that is kept clean, where it's easy to see anything that is coming in. Any attack from the outside will be easier to see. In the case of a farm, it will be easier to spot out if we have wild birds, if there's water laying around, if we have any flooding, if we have any trash, anything like that. So that should be an area, the peripheral buffer area. It's to offer a physical space of separation between the buildings where the pigs are housed and the perimeter of the farm. The other thing that is really nice about this picture is a single access point into this castle, and the same thing should be to a farm. That single access point basically allows us to enforce a strict entry control of people, vehicles, inputs, pigs, feed, any supplies that are going to go into the farm. We know exactly where are they coming from. There is only one way for them to come in, and that's where we are going to focus our efforts into controlling what is coming into the farm. Like we mentioned before, and this is another diagram of the peripheral buffer area, it limits the entrance to the farm, and then hopefully we have a single entry point. And the idea with that is basically to control the access of everything that is coming in. Most likely, or very likely, we're going to have an entry point for vehicles, and we're going to have a separate point for the entry of people. But the purpose is the same. We have a single entry point where we can exercise the biosecurity procedures, where we can communicate people that are unfamiliar with our biosecurity procedures, what is it that they need to do and what procedures they need to conduct in order to come inside the farm. This is another picture of when we talk about a peripheral biosecurity area. And then here we have in these three different colors, the different zones that we'll have in a farm. The gray zone is the public zone that is outside the biosecurity area. The light blue area is now inside the farm, and we can see here that we have an access point for the vehicles where they're going to be clean and disinfect. And then we have the most restrictive part of the farm. It's highlighted here in light green color. And here we can have one farm zone, or we can have different farm zones depending if we have more than one health status throughout the farm. Again, the idea here is that the external perimeter is going to restrict the access of everything to the farm, and then we're going to be able to have a single point of entry where we can control all the personnel, supplies, and animals and everything that is coming into the farm. We have a place to control their entry into the farm. Now we move into the line of separation. The line of separation is the last line of defense. It's the internal control that will set the limit where the animals are housed. And the purpose here is really to isolate pigs from their surroundings. The line of separation normally is going to be some sort of physical barrier. It's going to be the walls of the barn. It's going to be the bird netting. Is going to be the doors. It's going to be other structures or obstacles that basically pose a physical limitation coming into the farm. The idea, just like with the peripheral buffer area, is here to impose a control for the entry of people, vehicles, supplies, feed, equipment, everything else that is going to come into the barn where the pigs are housed. And here we're truly talking about physical barriers, whether it's like I mentioned before, the walls of the barn, the doors, whether we have footbaths. There are truly a collage of physical barriers that we put in order to gain access to the pigs. Showers, it's a must-have at any modern pig farm, as well as changing of clothes and footwear. Those activities are of paramount importance in any commercial swine operation today. Here's an example of a diagram provided by Pig 333, where we have dirty side, which is basically the side that is outside the farm. And within the farm, we can have different areas. In this case, they're talking about red line, they're talking about an orange line. All these two different points are within the farm. In this case, they're probably making reference here to the grow finishing pigs being in the lower health status and the wean pigs being on the higher health status. And this is, I wanted to show this because it illustrates very well the point that within a farm we can have different lines of separation, and we can have different zones of biosecurity within the same farm that we need to control and manage appropriately. Going back to this picture of the Leeds Castle, we talk about the peripheral buffer area. Now we can, I'm highlighting here the lines of separation, and the lines of separation are the walls and different physical structures that we have. And then we also see that these also have different single access entry points to each one of the different areas. In this case, I'm highlighting 3 different entry points. One to the farm, which I highlighted before. Then we have the second one going into what I'm going to call the main building of this castle. And then we have a very narrow passage going into the innermost part of this castle that is completely surrounded by water. And that's another physical line of separation. And they make it narrow so it's harder for, let's say, invading troops to go by. And we need to use these architectural analogies of the medieval castles to think about how do we narrow the access of enemies coming into our farms. And those enemies are microscopic pathogens that we can see, but we can put up different access points and different control points to make sure that as we move into higher and higher and higher health areas, or higher and higher areas of security, that we're following the proper procedures. And like in the design of this castle, once you cross the outside door, it doesn't mean that you're going to have full access to every and all the parts of the farm. There is still going to be restrictions within the inner part of the farm. We have talked about shower and changing facilities. We obviously favor showers. Put in here a diagram of what I'm going to call an ideal shower facility, and all that means is basically that it has different zones. There's a zone where you're going to remove your shoes and you're going to leave the shoes outside. There's going to be another area where you're going to remove all the clothes that you're bringing from the outside of the farm, and by definition all those clothes are considered to be dirty. We go through the shower where we can basically clean ourselves and then move into a clean area where we pick up clothing and footwear from the farm. And then from there on, we move into an area where we're ready to have access and contact with the pigs. This will be the ideal situation. In some cases, it's not practical or it's not feasible to have shower facilities, so we can think about changing stations like this one depicted here from our colleagues at Huber Pharma. And then basically what we have here is the bench in the middle delineates, and it's the line of separation between the dirty outside and the clean inside of the farm. And then how we go about it, these are the details that need to be spelled out in the biosecurity plan that is specific for your farm. So the diagram that I showed you before, it was to highlight, different zones of a shower, not necessarily to give you an architectural drawing of how showers should be. Here are different configurations and different arrangements of showers. They all have a different design, but they all serve the same purpose, where we have basically an area that is considered a clean area and an area that is considered a dirty area, and then an area where we're going to be able to leave all the clothing from outside, go through the shower and get into the clean area where the farm provides all the necessary clothing and footwear that is needed for the workers, the consultants, veterinarians, visitors, and everybody that comes into the farm. It is also important to note that outside of these shower facilities, there needs to be an area where the boots can be placed and where the boots can be washed and disinfected and ready to dry in order to be used by somebody else when they come into the farm. Track disinfection into the farm is very important, and I'm showing here some pictures that I found on the internet of some very interesting ways to have the disinfection, the outside disinfection of trucks coming into the farm, sort of automated, and then be very efficient using these disinfecting foggers. But it's important that the trucks are going to be disinfected before entering the farm. And these disinfection are going to do a very good job covering every square centimeter of a truck as much as possible. We need to think about not only the size and the top of the truck, but very important, think about the underbody and the tires of the truck. Those need attention as well, and they need to be properly disinfected. Now, and we'll see this more in detail at the end of the talk, if the trucks are coming into the farm and those trucks are dirty, then we're going to need a two-stage approach here. The first stage will be a place where the truck needs to be washed and where we need to remove all the dirt and any organic matter that is attached to that vehicle before we apply disinfectants, because as we're going to see later on in this talk, if we apply disinfectants in the presence of organic matter, then those disinfectants are going to be almost completely ineffective. In the previous slide, we show some pictures of some devices that could be used to disinfect the outside of trucks, but we also need to think about that the inside of the trucks, they need to be properly cleaned and disinfected. We gain absolutely nothing if we disinfect the outside of a truck, but the inside of a truck or a car or any vehicle looks like this picture in here provided by Iowa State University. Even if you try to apply disinfectant, there's so much organic matter in this photograph that even if you spray all of that disinfectant most likely is going to do absolutely nothing. This is a picture where we see a truck driver that is coming into a truck that was it's clean in the inside, therefore we can disinfect it. It's put in its disposable shoe covers and it's doing what it's supposed to do. What we're not seeing in this picture here is that these truckers in the truck cabin should have, let's say, a plastic container where they can dispose of these disposable footwear, where they can put them, where they can store them, where they can be exposed to disinfectants. And then at the end of the day, this plastic box is taken outside the truck with all those dirty shoe covers if needed to be, and they pose no biosafety hazard and no risk of transmitting diseases from one farm to another farm, and they're properly disposed at the end of the day. Without doubt, trucks are going to become dirty and very dirty, either by the transport of feed, but primarily and most importantly, when we transport pigs, those trucks are going to become very dirty. Here we have what I'm going to call an ideal truck washing station, and this trucking station has an independent entrance and exit, and it's basically the trucks flow in one direction. They cannot back up. There is no way to get out of this line of cleaning and disinfection, and we have here three very well defined zones. The first zone is the washing area. Here's where the truck comes in, and when it's absolutely dirty and the truck is completely washed. After the truck is thoroughly washed, it goes into an inspection and control area, where if we find any area that was not properly washed or that is still it's dirty, then the inspection personnel proceeds to clean it and wash it, and then the truck can move into the disinfection area. While the trucks are being washed, inspected, and disinfected, then the drivers are basically going through a separate line of the same procedure, where they're leaving the dirty clothes and the dirty footwear that they are bringing from the outside, where they're going to go. They're going to take a shower, and they're going to change into new clothing and new footwear, and then they're ready to go and be cleaned and disinfected to load pigs from another farm. I know this is obvious, but it's worth mentioning because it has to be done in this particular order. This is one case where if we change the order of the procedures, we're not going to get the same results. The barns need to be first, they need to be washed, and then they need to be disinfected. We cannot wash and disinfect at the same time. That is simply not very effective. So the barns need to be washed, and we need to remove any and all organic matter. Then after they're clean, we proceed to the disinfection of all the equipment and everything that is inside the barn. Then the barn needs to let dry. Those disinfectant needs a period of time in order to do their jobs. And then the barns, they need to be properly dry before the arrival of the next group of animals. While we're carrying either our daily activities or these clean and disinfecting procedures, we need to remember the boots. The boots need to be washed and disinfected on a daily basis or every time we walk in and out of the barn, regardless of if we have animals or not. We always need to think about that rubber boots are ideal because they're easy to wash, they're easy to clean, they're easy to dry, and they're easy to disinfect. So remember that footwear it's critical and important. So here's an example of some of the entrance procedures that I think are ideal going into a barn. And in this particular case, these farms and in these pictures, they have different sets of boots for different barns. So we can see a clear line of separation and some physical barrier between the footwear that is used to walk from one part of the farm to another part of the farm, and then the worker changes into the boots to go inside the barn. It's very important to use foot baths. These foot baths should contain antimicrobial agents or disinfecting agents. These agents could be, and these foot baths could be either dry foot baths, they could be wet foot baths, they could be liquids. Regardless of what we use, let's remember that we need to clean the boots, and the boots need to be free of organic matter before they can be properly disinfected. And as we see towards the end in the third part of this talk, that the presence of organic matters really have a detrimental effect on the ability of disinfectants to carry their job. Feed and water feed, it's delivered to the farm on a daily basis, and we also have feed throughout the farm. That feed needs to be properly stored, and we need to make sure that that feed does not come in contact with any wild birds, any rodents, any insects, anything that could contaminate the feed. The bins that are outside, we need to make sure that the lids are properly fitted, so the feed is not becoming wet and it's not molding or spoiling out. That if we drop feed or there is any feed spillage at any point in time, that spilled feed it's cleaned immediately. This will avoid attracting wild birds, rodents, insects, and other pests and vermin into the farm. With regards to the water source that we use to the farm, in a previous talk, we talk a lot about water, and I want to re-emphasize here that wherever we are storing the water at the farm, whatever types of tanks we're using to store water, that water and storage need to be free of any contaminants, should not allow any wild birds or any rodents or any insects or any other domestic or wild animal or any pest to have access to that water. And that water needs to be treated properly, needs to be disinfected using chlorine or ultraviolet light or any other disinfecting procedure. And then we need to make sure that if we have wet feed, remember that wet feed is going to encourage the growth of mold and microorganisms. And we also need to think about the type of waters that we have and make sure that those waters will not trap a feed and that can be properly cleaned and disinfected. In order to have a good husbandry practice at the farm, we really need to be good observers of the behavior of the animals and also make sure that we are properly documenting the performance of the animals. Changes in feed intake or water intake could be a very good indicators of an early disease challenge, but we will know that these challenges is about to start or is starting only if we have proper measurements and if we have good record keeping. Like I mentioned, the behavior of the pigs is important, very important to know what is normal. How do we know what is normal? By simply paying attention on a daily basis to what pigs do, and everything outside of that will be something that we'll consider abnormal. If the pigs are unhealthy, if they are not thriving, if we have changes to their stool quality or the appearance of the fecal material, if we have diarrhea, changes in the color of the feces, shortness of breath, the animals are not growing properly. All these things are very important to detect them early on and communicate them as they are detected with the veterinarian and follow the instructions that the veterinarian will tell us. Similar, production parameters, we should be measuring that one on a constant basis. We should have an idea, really good idea for our production system. What is the daily mortality rate? What's the weekly mortality rate? And therefore, once we quantify it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, as soon as we detect that there is a spike in mortality, we need to contact the veterinarian and let them know that something has happened. And then we'll follow the instructions that the veterinarian will provide us. Same thing, consumption of feed and water, as I mentioned before. One of the first things that animals will do is, if they're sick, most likely they're going to reduce their feed intake. So it's a very good idea to have a daily log of what is the feed intake of the animals, how much feed we're using. And when we see that we're not using enough feed, then that will be a sign of concern. And again, we'll call the veterinarian, let him or her know what's going on, and we'll follow their recommendations. Here are some minimal biosecurity procedures that we should use for the two main categories of pigs that we're going to talk about, and those are the commercial pigs and the breeding herd. So for nursery growing and finishing pigs, we should basically manage the barns as an all-out, all-in, and I want to stress out the all-out. All pigs need to get out of the barn at some point in time. There should be no animal remain in the barn, with no exceptions, and that is the time at which we go in and we empty the barns, we clean the barns, we disinfect the barns, the feeders, the silos. Everything is basically turned over, washed, cleaned, and disinfected, and then be ready for the next group of pigs. In terms of the breeding herd, we cannot depopulate the barns like we do with the commercial pigs, but then we should have a protocol or protocols in place as to how are we going to test these animals, how are we going to isolate them, how are we going to quarantine them, how are we going to introduce them to the farm, if needed to be, how we treat them with the proper vaccinations. If that's the case, and if that's the veterinary recommendation, how are we going to do a control exposure or a particular disease to these animals before they come into the farm, so they have developed a level of immunity against whatever is it that we want to prevent. And for the breeding herd, if we need to, then we'll conduct proper bleeding test and send those to laboratories to be analyzed to make sure that whether or not we have achieved the level of immunity that we want to before we move them with the rest of the breeding herd. Let's review a few points that we have discussed up to this point. What are the two basic areas in a biosecurity plan? The two main areas are the clean area and the dirty area. Within the clean area, we can have different clean areas, but those will be subgroups. But in general terms, we think about, what is dirty is everything outside the farm, and clean is everything inside the farm. The three stages of an ideal truck sanitation station are washing, inspection, and disinfection, and they have to flow in that order. Last question, can the feed truck driver enter the farm? Yes, the driver can enter the farm. The driver has to enter the farm because the truck has to enter the farm. The question here is, where can the driver go? The driver should have the ability to go wherever he or she needs to go and no further. Almost with no exception, any truck driver should not have direct physical contact with the animals at the farm. They should be able to have access to whatever areas they need to unload the feed, following the proper procedures, making sure that they have proper clothing and footwear, and then make sure that they leave the farm as soon as possible.